What's up, teammates? Sorry you missed us last week. We had snow and ice, and there's not very good lighting at home to do videos like this. Sorry, I got my arm over your face. There's not very good lighting at home to do videos like this, so we had to wait a week. But here we are. And have you guys noticed how in the past several decades, a lot of movies, stories, TV shows, a lot of the most popular ones always kind of lump in and say that the bad guy in these shows, the person doing bad things, is just an evil person and just a bad guy, and the people that are the heroes are just good people doing good things and stuff like that? I think it's a problem because past a certain point, like in history, it was more common to give a little bit more nuance and backstory to both the heroes and the villains. Because fact of the matter is a villain might be the bad guy in a story, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have reasons or justifications or good intentions going into the thing that they do. As people say, the road to, where is paved with good intentions. And I think it's caused a lot of us to grow up with this concept of duality. Someone's either a good person or a bad person. Someone either is this or they are that. And because of that, we tend to stereotype people and lump them into these different boxes without ever realizing that no one really ever fits inside that box. See, my favorite stories are the ones who tell the real story about the villain or the person doing a bad thing. The stories that humanize them, right? I don't like the concept of dehumanization at all. I was raised in a Sunday school in Oklahoma where it was, God loves everybody. God accepts everybody. And I took that stuff to heart, right? But then I grew up and I realized that there are so many people who see the world in black and white, this or that, good or bad. And fact of the matter is that completely throws out the concept of reality. Because in reality, things are nuanced. In reality, something that I might view as something evil that somebody did, there might be others with a different perspective who view them as the hero, right? They say that history is written by the victors, and that's absolutely true. And that's the reason we learn about, oh, this is evil and this is not evil, or this, that, and the other. But fact is, great people, amazing people are capable of extremely bad actions. We're all human. Same time, someone who typically maybe acts in bad faith or does bad things might have a reason for it, or is also capable of doing amazing things for somebody, right? I know, for example, one of the big things that's been going around TikTok lately is there's this big time creator who has, talked out against sexism, misogyny, that type of thing, just same way I do, for a very long time, in a way that that they understand the difference between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And then yet there's a big to-do with a couple of these content creators lately where they got caught doing the thing they knew was reprehensible. They got caught doing the very thing that they spoke out against. Right? So even people with good intentions that overall are good people can do very bad things, and vice versa. So what I hate to see, and what I talk to my students about all the time, is you have to stop lumping things into this or that. You have to stop stereotyping people. Goodness, we're awful about that online. I express an opinion about that's related to sexism or women in the workplace, and then all of a sudden I'll get 20 comments saying, well, you must not believe in the Second Amendment, and you must this and you must that. Wait, because I had one opinion on one subject, automatically that means I have these other opinions on another subject? Nah, it's not fun, dude. It's not fun to stereotype. Not at all, right? Would you want someone to lump you into a particular box and everyone to just believe that that's who you are, even if it runs completely counter to what you believe in, completely counter to who you are, right? And this is something that happens all the time. And we've really got to stop stereotyping people like that, because I will have different opinions based on the topic. And we got to get back to that. Like, have an opinion based on a topic, not based on a stereotype, right? And so if you have a long 5-hour conversation with me and it's honest and I answer all your questions and everything else, you're not going to know what to do with me, because I might answer some questions in a way where you want to label me this, but then I'm going to answer other questions in a way where you're going to want to label me as this other thing. And then when you realize that I don't fit on either side of that, your brain's gonna explode, and you're gonna assume I fit there anyway just because you want me to, because you're not intelligent enough to see that life is nuanced. You're not intelligent enough to see that there is stuff beyond right and wrong, black and white, that there is more to the story, and there's always more to the story, right? I don't find that to be true. I don't find that stereotypes typically are true. They're not true for me, and they're not true for anybody that I know. I might have maybe 5 people in my life that really fit a stereotype quite well, but out of the how many thousands of people I work with that don't, and I think most normal people, they don't. And so when you pigeonhole people and say, oh, because you think this, you must also think this, you understand you're committing logical fallacies there. Just because I think this about this topic doesn't mean you can assume I automatically think something in another topic and stereotype me into something. Guys, you have to understand that that's how they dehumanize people. You can go back into the days of Stalin and the days of Hitler and the days of whatever else, right? Go way back to the Greeks, way back to the Romans. And how did they justify even religious nations? How did they justify killing? How did they justify war? How did they justify these things, including in the Bible? Well, they justified them by saying that's them and they're not like us. They're not human like we are human, and therefore it's okay to mess them up, right? Which is something Jesus preached against. I'm not making this a religious thing, but, treat the foreigners as if they're, I don't know the exact, verse, but y'all have all heard that verse before. Treat the foreigners good, clothe the naked, feed the sick, or take care of the sick, feed the hungry, all that kind of stuff, right? But what he was actively speaking out against is propaganda. He was speaking out against this concept of propaganda, where if you can convince a person to dehumanize another person or see them as less than human, which you do that through giving stereotypes. You do that through creating stereotypes so that when one person says one thing, then other people go, oh, well, they must be this stereotype. And that allows them to dehumanize them and see them as the enemy. It allows them to look at a neighbor that they once supported and broke bread with and everything else and go, oh, that neighbor's the enemy. Really? That neighbor watched your kids when you needed it. That neighbor watered your plants when you're out of town. That neighbor looks out for you and your place when you're not there. But now because they think something different from you, all of a sudden they're the enemy because you've lumped them into a stereotype. Stereotypes are the tools that people in power use to manipulate us to see other people as being less than human. Because once we can see them as less than human, we can justify killings. We can justify violent acts. We can justify these things by saying, oh, yeah, but they don't deserve those rights. They don't deserve a trial by their peers. They don't deserve to be, innocent until proven guilty, or whatever the case is. But this is what many people who rose to power across many, many civilizations have used for a long time to control their people, by saying, hey, those people right across that border over there, they're sick, twisted, they're not even human. They eat different food than us, and they speak a different language than us, so therefore it's okay for us to go pillage them and to go do terrible things to their women and children and things like that. Every civilization has done this type of thing, right? It's not uncommon. It's something you should have learned about in your 6th or 7th grade, don't you dare, about your 7th grade history class, right? Stuff like that. And, that's one of those things that drives me up the wall when I see people do it. Is these stereotypes, no one ever fits in that little box you think they do. But by believing in these stereotypes, you start to make assumptions about people. And we all know what assuming does. Yeah? You take the first 3 letters, then the 4th letter, and then the last 2 together, and you get it, right? It's what assuming about people does, because you're going to be wrong 95% of the time. You're going to be wrong about it. Now, are there people that fit that stereotype perfectly? Yeah. Usually it's the people who have been manipulated by this type of stereotypical propaganda, who then place themselves inside of a small box and a stereotype because they're so insecure that they just want to fit in with a culture of people and feel like they belong. This is what people use to manipulate you into being who they want you to be, instead of being who you or your mom or who else wanted you to be. Right? So if you find yourself being somebody that is very much fits a stereotype, or you meet somebody that very much fits a stereotype, often it's because they have made themselves and chosen to make themselves fit that stereotype because they're too insecure with the other people around them. They don't feel like they fit in. They don't feel like they belong. And so they want to belong to a group. And so they conform themselves to fit into that nice little box so that other people will like them. And y'all, when I put it that way, you can hear how sad that is, right? Like how messed up that really is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Willie, is that Willie? Yeah, absolutely right, man. It's a culture that starts bringing about hate that can cause you divisions within your own family. Let's go back to the Civil War, right? Like, how many brothers fought against each other? How many siblings? How many parents fought their own kids? Right? This is something we learned about in school when we did Civil War and things like that. Well, how do you convince somebody to fight in a battle knowing that they could potentially kill their family member on the other side? Well, they dehumanize them by telling you that that person fits this stereotype and therefore they're evil and therefore they must be destroyed, right? But real life is way more nuanced than that. For example, a lot of people talk about the Civil War, and they talk about, oh, well, it was, people that wanted slavery, and then you had your abolitionists, and then you had people that just wanted slaves treated better, and you had these kind of things. Yeah, but, most of the people that fought for the Confederacy didn't necessarily believe in those ideals. They just happened to live there and got pulled in, and boom, that's how families ended up fighting families and stuff like that.
And guess what? A lot of them that were fighting were not rich landowners. Guess what they were? They were poor white people who didn't own land, and guess what? They didn't have a right to vote either.
Yeah.
They were considered just as lowly as what the whole thing was about.
All right, so to answer this person's question on YouTube, what am I talking about? Well, I thought I was being pretty clear, but what I'm talking about is...
Don't be a jerk.
No, that's
and
not exactly what I was going for. What I was talking about is that if you see things in dualities, as in a person is either good or evil, or or it's right or wrong, or it's black or white, or it's this way or it's that way, or if they believe this, then they must also believe this, making those assumptions, then you're not seeing the world through clear eyes. You're not seeing reality for what reality really is, because reality has thousands of nuanced concepts on a wide spectrum, right? Where a person might feel one way about one thing, but then they don't fit the stereotype of people that think that way because they feel another way about another thing, right? And I think this is why we see the rise of independence in this country. Like, I was reading an article the other day I found kind of interesting that the percentage of people politically affiliated as independents has went up from, I don't know, it's 20-something% to like 48% in the past 5 years or 10 years or something like that. And I found that fascinating because I think a lot of people realize this. A lot of people realize that when someone is asking you to fit in a stereotype or demanding you fit in that stereotype to fit in, what they're really doing is using your insecurity and your sense of wanting to belong as a way to dehumanize someone else so that they can get you to fight and die for them. So that they can get you to fight and die for their causes. Who are they? Who are them? Man, it happened with the Romans, it happened with the Greeks. We can get into the Germans, the Italians. It's happened a lot across history. I say a lot because honestly, pick your point in history and we can talk about that, right? Because this is what power does to get people to fight for them or control them or keep things divided. They do this by getting you to put yourself in the box and become the stereotype so that they can dehumanize anyone that thinks different from you. So they can make you see the people who think different from you as if they're not even human. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm talking about the whole time. Thought I was being pretty clear about that. I want to catch up on this. Sorry. Always man by the poor? Absolutely. Yeah. I am, in some degree, I am talking about my values and I'm talking about my virtue, but I am talking about the fact that most people, and I mean most decent people, do not fit in stereotypical boxes. You know what I mean? There's a lot that do, but there's a lot more that don't. And the ones that do, like I said, usually put themselves in that box because they're insecure, don't know who they want to be, and they want a sense of belonging, and they want a sense of victory, right? Some people are just super competitive and they want a sense of victory. So they put themselves in a stereotype box so that they can dehumanize an enemy and then turn around and claim victory over that enemy constantly as a boost of dopamine, as a boost to mental. So yeah, I'm talking about my opinion to some degree, but there's a lot of historical facts that back these things up too, right? So that's one of those things. Well, that's about it on that. That's really all I wanted to talk about, to be honest. Stop putting people in little boxes and going, oh, well, look, I had a guy, this actually came up the other day, right? I had a guy comment on a martial arts video I had posted, so martial arts parkour studio. And I posted this fun martial arts video that featured a couple of women the other day. And it was really fun. It was great. The video got great response. But I had some weird comments, and one of them made a pretty sexist comment. Well, only a woman would take self-defense classes for fun. That's what they said. And I was like, well, first, it wasn't a self-defense class. It's an MMA class. But regardless of the point, regardless of that, I told him, I was like, hey, man, sexism isn't allowed here. I'm not going to agree with that. And he couldn't even see that what he said was sexist. He's like, well, no. I support my wife, and I'm involved in these organizations, and I do all this outreach for women's rights and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, but maybe you're a good person doing good things, but you still can't see the fact that one comment you made was a bit sexist, right? So that's, again, what I'm talking about is that guy didn't fit in the stereotype. I might would have put him in over a comment. With social media and everything these days, we have this habit of seeing someone make one post, one comment, one video talking about one thing, and then we turn around and go, oh, well, I know everything about that person now. I know everything they think. I know all their opinions. I know what they're going to say. I know this, I know that. And we choose to hate people based on one micro comment without ever paying attention to the macro of who that person really is, or the macro of what that person really does. And that's what I mean. That's my whole point in this. Life is nuanced, right? Every bad guy has a backstory. Every bad guy also have people that see them as the hero in history, right? Every time we run into something like I said earlier, the truth is written by the victor. You know what I mean? And I can tell you this because I was raised by a foreign parent. I can tell you that what we learn about our history is wildly different from what many other countries learn about our history and about their history. And I found that to be fascinating growing up. When I was learning history in school and I find something out through social studies and I come home to share it and I'm like, hey, I learned this really cool thing about American history. And then to have, my mom and her entire family go, well, we weren't taught that. We were actually taught this. And it was just kind of interesting. It got me interested in reading deeper into the topics and finding out that the truth is usually somewhere in between, right? It's not usually on one extreme or the other. But if you let someone, I don't understand why anyone would let themselves be convinced to choose to fit into a stereotype to fit in. That part I don't get. Just insecurity, I guess, right? But fact of the matter is no one's going to fit in the little boxes you try to put them in. You can see them that way all you want, but you don't see the support they give their neighbors. You don't see the outreach that they do. You might think of them as evil because they think something different than you, but you don't see all the good they do in the community. You don't see all the nice things they've done, maybe for you, maybe for others or otherwise. They don't see all that. They just, well, because I fit in this stereotype, then this person must be in the opposite stereotype. But there is no one side or the other. It's either a spectrum or a circle, right? Where there's going to be people on every aspect of this circle. If you learned anything about geometry and plotting points, you should understand this concept, right? It's not one or the other. Sometimes it can be both, right? So, go ahead.
I was going to say, I didn't actually get to talk to this person, but there was someone who came in who was looking for a different business other than ours. And one of our other staff members was talking to them, and they apparently moved out here so they could be around people like us, and not deal with foreign-owned businesses or foreign-run businesses. I'm changing some of the words, obviously. And then they asked about our classes, and the staff member told them, yes, the people you see leading the class, those are who would be teaching. And what I find interesting is it's impossible to pigeonhole this person into you're being racist, because, like, yes, they make comments that were like, okay, that's
a little weird.
That's a little
weird. And we're in the middle of Oklahoma.
But then also they turn around and they are a man perfectly fine with being taught by women.
Yeah.
Which
I remember that.
Yeah, and
I remember
so
that
it's
because he
like-
didn't want to be taught by a woman. But
no,
our beginners,
he did. No, he was fine.
yeah,
But he didn't want, if I did not look like I do, he would not be okay with me teaching him.
oh yeah, that was it.
And so,
I remember that one.
Like, I'm kind of glad I didn't talk to this person, but it's interesting because he's totally fine with one thing that a lot of super masculine men are not okay with,
But not another
but
thing.
not another thing.
Yeah.
And I understand they're not mutually exclusive, but like, you can't pigeonhole someone because they can have some completely different on the other end of the spectrum views.
And that's the thing.
And-
We're all raised different. We all grew up with different experiences that shaped us. So none of us are going to be the same. And it's our uniqueness that makes us interesting to the world. It's our differences that make us interesting. Now, I had a couple of these I wanted to answer. I was waiting until you finished. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Thank you. I think it's Aunt Willie. Aunt T. Willie. I'm sorry. I'm not good at these. I appreciate all that and your input there. Stacy wants to take you to dinner, I guess.
Okay.
Down for dinner. I'm not invited.
I'm a foodie. So
I'm a yapper. Yeah, no, I'm actually not, but this is a podcast and a live video. So the whole point is to talk. So yeah, I'm going to do that.
This is one of our shortest videos too.
And you're absolutely right, Willie. Male-dominated society is not a modern construct. So the pressure of today isn't that far off. You're absolutely right. It's not a modern construct. It's actually, I mean, yes, we push back against it now, maybe more than many other times in history. But yeah, it's been a standard. I'm not saying I agree with it, but historically, that's how things have been done. You know, let her talk. I just did, bro.
I talk when I want to. It's fine.
I did let her talk, man. All right. It's the one that wanted to take you to dinner. Yeah, absolutely. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to this?
No, that was all that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. By the way, if you do want to hear more of her talking, our previous episode that we did a couple of weeks ago, I cannot remember the title of it, but she ran that whole episode. So if you want to hear her talk, go search out our podcast, #Teammate Talks, anywhere you get your podcast, or you can find it on YouTube and look for, it would be the first video past this one.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I don't though, because I was a little wonky with the comments. I was a little too extra.
We were talking about, what were we talking about now? We were talking about kids.
Something with kids. I don't know.
Emotional regulation. We were talking about helping kids learn emotional regulation, which that's another thing. We talk about that a lot, and then people want to stereotype us into gentle parenting. No, just because we talk about helping kids, understand their emotions and process them and help give them coping skills and guidance and things like that, that doesn't mean they don't face consequences. That's the thing. And gentle parenting is supposed to include consequences, but when most people say gentle parenting, that's what they're talking about, is no consequences or punishments.
That is permissive.
That's permissive parenting. Gentle parenting was different. It actually does leave space for real world consequences, which is what there's this new thing in the UK people are talking about. They call it FAOFO parenting. But really all it is gentle parenting rebranded, where it's I'm not going to punish you, but if you refuse to wear your coat, I'm not arguing with you, and I'm not going to listen to you complain when we go into town that you're cold. And then at the end of it, we're going to say, well, that's the consequences for not wearing your coat like I told you to, right? Yeah. Real world consequences. Oh, you stepped on a sticker? Well, I told you to put shoes on. That's the consequence. So yes, consequences are a big part of parenting. And I've never once said that they aren't. But I had an argument with somebody the other day because I was talking about how controlling your children, truly controlling somebody, is impossible. You can't control their thoughts. You can't control what they say or how they act or what they do. That's authoritative parenting, right? So you can't fully control anything but yourself. What you can do is influence and guide people to make those better decisions and deal out consequences when necessary. This person took that to mean that I was anti-consequences, anti-punishment, save the kid from every trouble they get into. That's not what I mean at all. And that's another thing I think, people see a micro piece of a message that I put out there and they automatically make these big assumptions as to what I mean, without seeing the rest of the picture, the rest of the concept, or the rest of the story. Miss you too, Hunter. Good to see you on here. It's been a while. Putting a coat on your kid. Yeah, natural consequences. That's it. I am a huge believer in natural consequences. It was called Don't Mess with the Queen. I'm not sure we were
when I went wonky on the comments. I think that was
not a troll, bro. I'm not answering that question here. Are you crazy? Did you see that one?
I did.
Oh my goodness. Traditional parenting rebranded, yeah. Boo, Jabber talk. Yeah, I talk a lot. So does she. It's all good.
I do. I just don't.
Yeah, Hunter, I
always
know.
talk
I
about
know.
it on here.
Dude, Hunter, I knew I knew you followed us on YouTube for a long, long time. How are things going after y'all moved and everything? I hope y'all still doing good.
I follow his mom. He's doing fine.
Beard coming in nice. Uh, I've had this beard for, I see what you're trying to say. No, I've had this beard since I was 13. Well, I had a goatee. Oh, I had a beard at 13, 14. Wore a goatee. I will not ever share a picture of that between the ages of 15 and 18. And then I went back to a full beard. So I did get to the point. The point's done. The episode's over. I'm just answering comments now. We did get to the point. You were there when we talked about the point, Stacy. We were talking about not stereotyping people and pigeonholing people, right? Who was a chief in the Navy? I wasn't. I did not serve in the military. I almost did. Most of my family did. I chose a different route because I was homeless and did not handle authority well. To be honest, I probably would have been kicked out by the end of boot camp. What martial arts are we teaching? Very great thing. So our curriculum is a mixed curriculum. You might call it MMA. My background is in Chanhan Taekwondo, which is very similar to Shotokan Karate. It's very combative oriented. I spent a few years doing Kenpo. I spent a few years doing Judo. I've got 5 years into Jiu-Jitsu. I've got 10 years into Capoeira. I've got like 20 years in the ITF Taekwondo. I've done Muay Thai. I've got 2.5 years of Muay Thai and several other things. And our curriculum is custom built, pulling from various sources so that we can do, okay, here's the best kick techniques that the best Taekwondo artists use. Here's the best punch combinations and slips and dodges that the best boxers use. Here's the best clinch work that we found from the Muay Thai guys. Here's the best takedowns we found from Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. Here's the best holds and joint locks we've learned in Jiu-Jitsu and things like that. And we created a very custom curriculum. Now, that said, it's a much bigger curriculum than most any other studio I know of. So our people take close to 10 years to make it to black belt. But most of the time, they're pretty skilled by blue belt. Most of the time, they're pretty skilled by about a little over the halfway point. Because most of my students at the halfway point in their training have trained just as long as a lot of black belts and other styles. And I'm not picking on other styles. Train what you want. Have fun with it. It doesn't matter. Any amount of training is better than no training. But this is just the way we choose to do things because I didn't want to run a sports school. And that's why we don't call ourselves an MMA gym. I didn't want to run a sport MMA gym. I wanted to run classes that focused on a little bit on sport, but mostly on self-defense where there are no rule sets. And a lot of people, well, jiu-jitsu is great for that. Look, I love jiu-jitsu and I will never smack talk it. But I will say this, a lot of people don't train jiu-jitsu with striking involved and don't realize that there's a lot of jiu-jitsu material that's great for sport, but not great when strikes are involved, right? And so we only teach the stuff that's more useful when striking is involved and stuff like that. And yeah, there's more to it, but yeah, that's basically what I'm getting to. And I'll never talk down on jiu-jitsu. It's one of my favorite arts, second favorite. It's my second favorite art to train. But at the same time, if you assume that one style of movement or one style of defense is all you need for self-defense, you're going to find yourself in trouble. Because jiu-jitsu breaks down in multi-attacker scenarios. Like what happened to that teen girl that got jumped earlier this week by 5 other people. Jiu-jitsu is not going to be your best friend when it comes to doing a 5-on-1 situation or a 2-on-1 situation or not knowing who's around the corner that's going to come kick your teeth in. Which reminds me of a quick story I want to tell. A lot of people, this is why I get the good guy with the firearm stuff drives me nuts, because I know a guy who got a firearm pulled on him while he was doing some training at a park. And the guy with the firearm was kind of stupid, didn't really know how to use it. You know, most of these guys don't have any training. And my buddy managed to disarm him, and that guy was on the ground and he was holding the gun on the phone with 911, on the phone with police. And another guy walks by, sees him holding a gun over a guy on the ground and literally shoots him in the leg. Just shoots him because he had no idea what was going on, right? And I kind of forgot where I brought up this story. Because this can happen in a fight too. So maybe someone takes a swing at me. Maybe someone assaults me aggressively and I respond in a physical kind. And maybe a third person didn't see any of that happen. They just look over and they see me with a rear naked choke and my seatbelt in and then go, oh no, that guy's going to kill the other guy and then run up and kick me in the head. right? These things can happen. And so that's something I talk about a lot. So when we talk about our arts, the martial arts we teach a little bit of a lot of things, and we always constantly pressure test everything at 100% to make sure that it has the potential to be effective in the real situation. Now, if anyone tells you that a technique or principle is effective 100% of the time, they're trying to sell you on crap and they're lying to you. When you first learn a technique, you're lucky to make it work 20% of the time. And it takes a lot of training on that technique to be able to make it work 50% of the time or 70% of the time. But you're never going to get much higher than that. It's never going to always work. Every situation is going to be different depending on size, leverage, skills, skill gap. There's all kind of location, environment, the things that are laying around. There's all kinds of things like that, right? Yeah, but I'm answering questions. Tuned out, yeah. Hunter, that'd be cool. I thought you guys moved away. Are you guys back? That'd be cool. I'd love to see you guys again.
Depends on which Hunter it is.
Yeah, no, I know who it is. But I might be mistaken on that. All right, since we already finished our episode about 10 minutes ago, and I've just been answering comments ever since, I'll let her sign us off.
Until the next time, be the best teammate you can be, and be the best at being you.